Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 195, cover dated July 1985. The cover by Bill Sienkiewicz, inked by Dan Green. It's an outrageous cover, it's eye-catching. It is of Wolverine with his claws popped, about to gut one of the members of Power Pack. That's Katie Power, the littlest of them. And this is a scene that doesn't occur within the issue itself, so there's some artistic license going on here, and it definitely gets the attention of the reader. But one other thing to note before moving, or a couple of things to note about Sienkiewicz's rendition of Wolverine is, number one, the implied height of Wolverine. He looks much taller than 5'3". Definitely this Wolverine could be played by Hugh Jackman. And also the mask. So the rendering of, what would you call them, the ears of Wolverine's mask there look a little bit strange, although it could be to do with foreshortening perspective. So let's open this one up to the first page. This is a rather offbeat story from Chris Claremont. It features only the X-Men in the second half of the story, really. There's a long first act focused on Power Pack. Here they are. Huddled up in the bed during a stormy night in Manhattan with their parents. And a couple of things I want to note about this three-panel first page is the one-point perspective here in the opening panel, where we're looking up into the sky. We've got the bolt of lightning there. So this is fairly simple to draw, but what is actually impressive on this page, at least to me, is the rendering of the street lights. I think that's a really nice touch from Romita Jr. I like the way that the title of the story is integrated into the art here. It was a dark and stormy night by Tom Orzechowski. And then this is a nice shot of the lightning casting light in through the window, the apartment window of the Powers. So the creative team here, Chris Claremont as ever writer, John Romita Jr. and Dan Green artists. I always make the point that what this means is that John Romita Jr. is providing pencils breakdowns and Dan Green finished inks. Tom Orzechowski, letterer, and Glynis Oliver rounds out the creative team as colorist. So let's continue with the comic, and we have a splash page here. There is a crash of thunder which wakes up the whole family. So that's nicely done by Romita Jr. And what I would say about Romita Jr.'s art on these couple of pages and throughout the issue is, number one, it is difficult to draw convincing children, and he does a really good job here to draw them in a fashion that they don't look like dwarves or mini humans or even old people. In some regards, there have been some disasters by certain well-known artists in terms of the rendering of children, but Romita Jr. does a very good job here. And Claremont, in terms of the dialogue, the sibling rivalry, the mild sibling rivalry among the four children, as well as the style of their speech patterns, Claremont does a really good job capturing that childhood voice and perspective of the kids. Now, he's doing here a favor for his old editor and friend, Louise Simonson, who resigned, so to speak, or stepped down as editor of Uncanny X-Men in order to pursue a career as a freelance writer. And a year earlier, she's launched Power Pack as her first title, and she's having a ball on it. But Uncanny X-Men is the top-selling Marvel title, and by Chris Claremont featuring Power Pack in this issue, this is a nice favor to Louise Simonson to shine the spotlight on her characters and maybe win a few new readers for that book. So the twist in this story is that the parents here don't recognize their children. So there's a little mystery in the opening pages as to what's happened. The children go to their bedroom and they find that all the furniture in their bedroom, all their toys and everything are missing and disappeared. Even their breakfast cereals are all gone from the kitchen. So the parents here have no memory of their children, and they think that these children have got real psychological problems and they should call the authorities. But then one of the children use their powers to disappear, create a fog and disappear out of the apartment. So they go right downstairs into the basement and they knock on the door of the building supervisor, Mr. Ortez, who he doesn't recognize them either. So now they know they're in trouble, so they run for it. and they make their way out into the alleyway beside the building that they live in. And then we've got the Powers parents and Mr. Ortez conferring outside at the front of the house about what a darn thing it is that has happened with the 4 kids. So they're hiding in the alleyway. It's raining hard at night. This looks like a miserable situation. Julie says that she feels awful, and you can well believe her. This is really well illustrated by Romita Jr. and Dan Green, and Glynis Oliver's colours are working really well to evoke the darkness and dampness of their situation. Then, of course, Katie remembers, what about their costumes? They should transform into their Power Pack costumes, and that will insulate them from the rain and cold. And then they start to figure out what maybe has gone wrong. And they remember a recent adventure which was told in Power Pack issues 11 and 12. And Julie here begins the summation of that adventure. She says, I washed their outfits after our adventure with the Morlocks. Do you think I somehow broke the built-in radios? They're trying to call their ship there Friday. And Jack Powers says, and you say boys don't know anything? Sheesh. What now? Suppose we call Grandpa and he doesn't know us either? And Alex asks the question, how could everyone forget overnight? It's like some horrible night. And then he thinks, remember you guys, we just met a Morlock named Beautiful Dreamer whose power was to change people's memories. And Julie says she was friends with that creepy old lady Anna Lee who wanted us to live with her as our own kids. But Alex, both the X-Men and Callisto, the Morlock's own leader, said she couldn't. She was to leave us alone. So they're onto something here, and Alex decides, come on, Julie, do we always do everything we're told? So they make their way down into the tunnels beneath Manhattan, and they're en route to the Morlock tunnels in order to, get their lives back. But they're caught by a bunch of Morlocks that are waiting for them. We've got Mask here, who grabs Katie, and the others are grabbed by a trio of other Morlocks, Erg and Ape there. And Katie uses her power to generate plasma cell balls, and she blasts Erg, but his powers, but they're useless against him because he simply soaks up the energy like a sponge. But Katie stomps on Mask's foot and she makes her escape, but not so fast as to escape him touching her on the face. And we can see the rendition there of his skin touching her face. She thinks he's missed her, but he hasn't. And longtime readers would know what Mask's powers are: to reshape flesh. So Katie bounds down the tunnel. She's startled by an underground train, and then she begins to break down. She's only 5 years old, and so she pleads here, I want my mommy, I want to go home. Julie, Alex, Jack, where are you? Don't leave me alone. Friday, that's the name of their ship. It's so dark. Their intelligence ship. It's so dark and squishy, and I'm cold and wet, and there's rats and alligators and bugs. Please, Whitey, that's the guy, the alien explorer who gave them their powers. Take your powers, make everything normal again, please. And I love the way that Orzechowski runs the lettering in to the words, all of the different words. So we get this sense of her panic and her anguish. It's really, really well done. Again, just another, you'd look at a page like this and you wouldn't think too much of it to begin with, but there is a great synergy here between all members of the creative team. Claremont writing a 5-year-old convincingly, Romita Jr. Telling the story so well here, and keeping her face in dark silhouette because that's going to be a big reveal coming up shortly, and also the colouring from Glynis Oliver as well. So a policeman finds her and offers her some help. He says, I'm a police officer, sweetheart, are you hurt? But she lashes out at him in panic with one of her plasma balls, and he is knocked to the ground, but she doesn't do him any major damage. And she is she reflects, I hit somebody, good thing I wasn't too powered up. So there we go, and we'll see what has happened to her at the end of this page. So the scene shifts to upstate New York, Westchester County, and the estate of Professor X's, a certain school on the shore of Breakstone Lake near the suburban New York town of Salem Center. So nice top-down establishing shot there. And then we're into the X-Men's kitchen again. And we were there in the previous issue, so we're back there again. And Kitty Pryde has only had 2 hours of sleep. She's studying for her midterm exam and working on a research paper for Dr. Power's physics seminar. So Professor X employing Dr. Power as part of Kitty Pryde's education at the X Mansion. And then she hears on the TV news a report that grabs her focus. Subway traffic on Manhattan's Upper West Side was disturbed just after midnight by a 5-year-old girl hurling balls of explosive lightning. So Kitty recognizes they must have been focused plasma cells, and she recognizes on the TV news screen the altered face of Katie Power. She's not old enough to be one of us, you dope, she says to the newscaster who figures that maybe she's a member of the X-Men. And she says, I know that costume, it's Katie Power, but her face so horribly changed. That's Mask's style. Of all the dirty rotten, I better wake the others, those lousy Morlocks broke their word. So, of course, Kitty Pryde has lots of experience with the Morlocks. She was betrothed to Caliban and almost went through with marrying him and living a life amongst the Morlocks with her own features altered in order to fit in with them. But then Caliban had a change of heart and set her free. And so she's got history with the Morlocks, and she is deeply, deeply angry now in terms of how Katie's being treated, and why not. So then the scene switches to Bellevue Hospital. Katie's there as a patient at the hospital, and Kitty phases up in her Shadowcat costume through the floor of the hospital ward where Katie is, and look how she's strapped down as well so as to prevent escape. But Kitty uses her powers on her, and they drop down into a storage room beneath that particular ward. It's a really nice shot of Wolverine here smoking a cigarette, nicely done by Romita Jr. And Katie is very upset. She's crying. Kitty tries to comfort her and says that she gives her word that they will that she's not going to be locked up forever away from her family. And this is an interesting little character bit from Claremont now. So Wolverine says here, and I like the way that Romita Jr. has rendered him hand on hip and very kind of standing nonchalantly as he smokes a cigarette. He says, "Coast is clear outside, Cat." "Thanks, Wolvie," she responds. And Katie says as she cries, "Kitty, I don't like him. He's scary." And I like the way Orzechowski has rendered the word balloon here, and the way that it kind of drops with ice, indicating the alarm and how scared Katie is of Wolverine. And this is really interesting in terms of the next time that they meet after this story, which is, of course, the fantastic Barry Windsor Smith collaboration with Claremont, that is Uncanny X-Men 205 Wounded Wolf. You'll find a video review of that here on the channel. And then we get a good look at Katie's altered face by Mask. And Rachel here says that it would be best if she silent with Katie and asks her permission, because they need to know what happened. And if Katie only told them by speaking, she might be mistaken about something, or forget, or leave something out. So she asks her permission. Will it hurt? No. So now Rachel uses her power to silence all the X-Men, and they get caught up on the whole story. And this leaves Kitty especially enraged. She says here, "I swear if it wasn't for Katie, I'd be saying things that'd make Wolvie blush. I've never been so angry because of what's been done to the Powers children." So Kitty promises, "We'll get your family back." And she gives her a special jacket to wear, an X-Men jacket. She says, "This jacket makes you an honorary X-Men. Nobody else in the world has one like it." So she puts it on. Here, Wolverine alert. This is a really nice panel by Romita Jr. and Dan Green and Glenn Soliver with that telltale red, which she uses when there's a scene of violence or alarm or heightened emotion. "Alarm," says Wolverine. "Those bozos finally noticed they'd lost their patient. Won't take a systematic search long to reach this place. Boss, time to vamoose." So Nightcrawler's on some other mission. And there's a little bit of characterization going on here where Wolverine's deferring to Kitty as boss. And Rogue says here, natural selection in terms of Kitty being nominated boss. And this is actually a nice little bit here from Claremont as well. This is thoughtful. So Rogue says to Katie, don't touch my face, okay, Katie? My power to put you to sleep, and we don't want that, do we? So Katie promises no, she'll be careful. And Wolverine thinks here, what Rogue really means is that she temporarily absorbed the kid's psyche and abilities, but telling Katie that it'd scare her stiff. So Rogue fibbed. Good move, girl. So two things kind of established there. Claremont doing well on the characterization in terms of Katie is 5 years old. She's got to be treated differently. And you can have a little noble lie, a little fib like that. And also catching up any first readers on what Rogue's powers actually are, not to send someone to sleep. So now they drop down into the Morlock tunnels. Wolverine is guiding them towards the room where, in fact, all the powers, kids' beds and toys and belongings have been placed. But there's a nice little interaction here between Katie and Wolverine, and I think some of the themes here will get picked up on in Wounded Wolf in Uncanny X-Men 205. So Katie says here, I wish I'd never seen Whitey or Friday. I wish we'd never been given these stupid powers. I can't do anything right with mine. When I was asleep once, I disintegrated my favourite doll, and another time my grandpa's oboe. I thought being Energizer, which is her superhero code name, would be fun. We'd have neat adventures like Luke Skywalker, but this isn't. And Wolverine's response is interesting. Neither were his, really. On the other hand, if not for those powers, we'd all be history. If you hadn't stopped your dad's machine from being tested, it would have destroyed the Earth. The hardest part about growing up, Katie, is understanding, accepting that every action is a mix of both good and bad. It ain't nice sometimes, but that's the way of things. So a story point there is Katie's surprised about how he knew about her father's machine. And he got that information from the Psylink, and he says to her that Rachel said we'd keep your secrets, Katie Power, and we will. By the way, my friends call me Logan. So that's how she'll address him in Uncanny X-Men 205. So Kitty phases the team into the Morlock room where the kids' beds and toys are, and then they finally confront Annalee with the other powers kids who've been equally changed physically by Mask and his powers. And Annalee has recently been bereaved. Her Morlock children were murdered, and so she is psychopathically taking the powers parents' kids and using Beautiful Dreamer to make them believe that she's their real mother. So this is kind of like potentially very dark stuff, but it's interesting to see how Claremont resolves it all in the conclusion of the issue. So to begin with, we have to have a fight, of course, and let's turn the page here. And so Julie here grabs Katie, and Wolverine grabs Alex. Of course, he's not going to use his claws on him, and that's as near as we get to the cover in this issue. But Alex uses his power to make Wolverine lighter than air, and so Wolverine is knocked up against the ceiling of the Morlock room. And meanwhile, then we pick up with Rogue, who is battling a whole slew of Morlocks there, and this is something that she does regularly. During Claremont's run, she punches a hole through a wall, so she's out here into a sewage tunnel. She's got more room to maneuver, she thinks, but she's grabbed from behind by Leech, and we get in the narrative captions an explanation of what's going on. The Morlock Leech, however, neutralizes any superpower in his immediate vicinity, to their mutual surprise, because Rogue is an amalgam of multiple personas, not all of them human. That's Carol Danvers and the Kree aspect of her. Neither power works quite the way it's supposed to. In fact, for the most part, they cancel each other out. Leech, as is usual with Rogue's victims, is shocked unconscious, but instead of absorbing the little creature's power, Rogue loses all her own. And then she's up against this team of, or this crew of heavy set, tough looking Morlocks, and how's she going to get out of this one without her powers? Well, this is an interesting choice from Romita Jr. in terms of the layouts on the next page. I'm going through at the moment Frank Miller's original Daredevil run, and Miller uses the full horizontal panel layout down the page for action sequences, and I am like, it is certain, it is on record that Romita Jr. was influenced by Frank Miller's original run on Daredevil, is a great admirer of Frank Miller's art on Daredevil and also Dark Knight Returns, and he's definitely pulling from Miller here with this fight scene of Rogue against the Morlocks, and she does really well against them, just with the strength of a normal woman, as she thinks to herself. Then we pick up with Wolverine, who's back on his feet, and Kitty Pryde, and they're getting overwhelmed by Morlocks, so she phases them out into the main Morlock tunnel, which is Morlock Alley, and of course there's hundreds more Morlocks waiting for them there. And they surround the Powers children and say, we look after our own, Outlander. And Wolverine responds, so do we. Better scoot after the kids, Shadowcat. I'll take care of business here. So she's worried Logan, and he says, this time, Kitty, there ain't no other way. I know, I still hate it, she responds, and gives him a kiss for luck. That's why you're right for the job, boss. And then he pops his claws. I'm not the one who's going to need luck, he says. Now, when I was rereading this in preparation for making the review video, I thought today, in the present time, you'd get a proper anchor image here. It's nice, but it's interesting that in this era, there isn't such scope for freedom with the art. And yeah, I wonder, would there have been another way to lay out the page in order to get a bigger anchor image there on Wolverine popping his claws? But nonetheless, it's a nice looking page and the story's well told. And then we switch to one of the sewage tunnels where Annalise says to Katie, don't fight us, darling, don't cry, this is for the best. Just close your eyes and let me sing you to sleep so beautiful dreamer can take away all the bad thoughts, the false memories that torment you. And when you wake, the world will be wonderful again, I promise. We'll be a family again and we'll live happily ever after, my sweetling, like they do in your favourite storybooks. But Katie's not having it. She protests and says no. And then her sister tries to persuade her to take up with them, and she continues her protest. She isn't our mommy, Julie. You're not our mommy, Annalie. You're not. So Shadowcat arrives and basically destroys Annalie psychologically here. She says to her, tell me, do you think this is what your real children sounded like before they were murdered? I wonder, did they plead, beg, pray, what their killer did out of hate, you claim to do for love, but the end result's the same, the destruction of innocent lives. Is that what you want? To be just like him? So as I said, that destroys her. She drops to her knees in the water. Mask here is determined to continue with the project and says, ain't nobody dying here, ex-girly, except maybe you. I'm finishing what I started and there ain't a thing you can do to stop me. And finally, Callisto shows up. So Wolverine was adamant throughout that Callisto couldn't be behind this. It wouldn't be on her orders. So she finally shows up and says, I hope for your sake, you have a real good explanation for this. So we're coming to the last 2 pages of the story. This is our denouement, our resolution. So all the children have been turned back to their normal state, and beautiful dreamers reversing her mind control of them. And Callisto determines, I want every memory restored, Dreamer, every change you made put right, just as Mask did with their bodies, to the parents as well. Sunder, you'll handle returning the furniture. By sunrise, I want everything back the way it was, understood. And then she orders, and furthermore, since I evidently didn't make myself clear last time, I'll say it plain as can be. These children are to be left in peace. They're friends, like the X-Men. They're off limits. And then we get this dark piece of Morlock culture, which is that Callisto's going to let Annalie off, But the usual way that they would solve Annalee's disobedience of Callisto would be to fight it out in the ring. And Callisto says, "You're no fighter, Annalee. In your case, that'd be tantamount to a summary execution." But Annalee wants to face Callisto in the ring and in effect be killed. And Katie then comes in for an interesting final resolution. What readers might not be expecting. "You can't, Annalee, you mustn't." And Annalee talks about how Katie reminds her of one of her youngest children. Her gift was much like our healers, just being with her made you feel wonderful. So what will Katie have to say to this bereaved mother? She says to her, she doesn't know why her child was killed, but don't you see, we're not yours. And if we stay, our parents will feel the same as you. No matter how hard Beautiful Dreamer tries to make them forget, they'll remember in their dreams. They'll hurt deep down inside without knowing why, and all the happiness will go out of their lives. Would your little girl want that? Would she want her mommy to be so cruel in her name? But look, even if we're not your children, can't we still be friends? And that's the surprising part. So this is an interesting kind of happy ending to this story. So Annalee accepts the offer, proposes to be a special grandmother to the children, and even proposes that they come around for Thanksgiving. And I like the fact, though, that Jack Power, who's maybe the most independent-minded, along with Katie, of the 4 children, has his doubts about it. He thinks it's a totally dumb idea, but in any case, he's overruled by the others. So, and then we have our setup for the next issue, where Rachel hears a sigh alert from the mansion. Something's terribly wrong, she says to Shadowcat. A potential world-class catastrophe. We're needed immediately. But Kitty, it isn't Professor Xavier calling us. We're being summoned home by Magneto, of all people. So we did see him be fished aboard from the sea by Lee Forster recently in one of the recent issues of X-Men. So what's he calling the X-Men to the X-Mansion for? Well, in the next issue, Information, we're told that the story is to be continued in Secret Wars 2, number 1, and X-Men 196. So there we go. This is interesting, the art here for issue 38 of Dazzler. So this is promotional art by Jackson Geese. It looks pretty cool, of Wolverine and Colossus going up against, obviously, Dazzler here. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on what is an offbeat story of the Uncanny X-Men, primarily featuring Power Pack. Not the most memorable of stories, but interesting in that it sets up this relationship between Logan and Katie that will result in a truly excellent classic story. That collaboration with Barry Windsor Smith coming up in Uncanny X-Men 205. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it on YouTube, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.